Hi again then guys, and welcome to a review from way back in the Gran Turismo franchise, from Gran Turismo 2, my personal entry point in the franchise, and this car has been requested a lot. In fact, it's one of the most requested cars for me to review, up there with stuff like the Espace F1 even. Now for me personally, I completely missed this car at the time. Back when I was a kid playing the game, this just wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't a huge Skyline fan back then anyway, so I tended to not take much notice of their cars. This one though is, I would say, alongside the R33 GT1 Le Mans car, a prime example of a really badly missed opportunity on behalf of PD, Polyphony that is, to bring the car back. We have the constant joke of having too many Skylines, too many GTRs in the games, and yet when it comes to a car that we would actually want from the Skyline range, it's never been featured again. That's very unfortunate, and who wouldn't want this car to come back? Even if you're not a Skyline fan, you can probably still appreciate how badass looking this car is. Now of course it's based on the R30 Skyline in particular, the extremely boxy base car, which we do still have. We do have the normal versions. Normal in a general sense, they are still performance cars, but they're not exactly as impressive as this. They are light and they are powerful. In fact, on Gran Turismo 6 you can even tune those cars up to be surprisingly similar to this one actually in terms of spec, or at least not too far off, but at the same time it doesn't compare. This is a whole nother level of vehicle, and it's the kind of car which you'd expect these days more on, say, Forza 7 than you would on Gran Turismo Sport, for instance, because Forza is having more and more of these silhouette-style race cars which are hugely popular. They're these raw, almost touring car meets Can-Am car kind of deal, with massive body kits. You have such a disparate spread of teams like Audi, Toyota, Porsche, I believe, are in there as well. Mazda, I think, were. Nissan, of course. You've got so many different manufacturers approaching it in these different ways. Some are stupidly powerful. Some, like this one, are a little bit more restrained, but also really lightweight. This car only weighs 960 kilos, which isn't that much more than some prototypes these days, LMP1 cars. The power isn't overly high, as I said, 555 horsepower and 508 pound-feet of torque. And that's from a straight 4 turbo. Pretty impressive engine. Now you can't buy this car, it's worth 125 grand to sell, but you do have to win it. You can't build it, as far as I'm aware, out of the normal Skyline either. It is a fully built, ready to go race car, all complete with the typo, which you can see on the screen. It's of course not called the Silhouette in the game because they spelled it wrong, but the horsepower per tonne, incidentally, is also quite high, because even though the power isn't ridiculous, the fact that it weighs well under a metric tonne means you're still looking at a very impressive 578 horsepower per tonne. Now in terms of how it actually performs, well, although I missed it back then, I would say that I missed out on it back then. It wasn't a case of just missing a car, but this would have been a car that I loved had I driven it back then, probably even more than I do now, because I can totally get why people love this car so much and why they want it back. This thing is insane through corners. It may even be the best handling race car I've ever driven in my experience on Gran Turismo 2, and I have to say, even compared to the Espace F1, this feels like an even better car through the corners. More planted, more grip, incredible handling, the turn-in is fantastic, it's surprisingly forgiving as well. It feels like it's just impossible almost to get it to spin out, despite the fact that it's not all-wheel drive, or at least, if I recall, I don't think it was. I believe this is a rear-wheel drive car. But it's incredible. The downforce is massive, the grip is huge, the cornering is, as I said, deeply impressive on this car, but also beyond that, something which I really value in a road car or a race car is when it's not just fast, but it's fun as well. Because there are definitely cars which have either or. You can have a car which is a load of fun, which will never win a race, or you can have something which is dominant, but really dull. And I'm sure you can think of cars on both ends of that equation. This one is one of the relatively few, I would say, which genuinely ticks both boxes. This thing can easily outrun cars with so much more power. It wasn't that much slower around this track than when I took the Toyota GT1 road car around here, and that has almost 1,000 horsepower. Not exactly a slouch either, and yet this was only about 2 or 3 seconds slower. That's very impressive for a track like this, which is so high speed in nature as well. Definitely check this car out if you get the chance. And yeah, I can see why you guys want it back. It would really fit in well on Gran Turismo now, or even on Forza 7 as well, but of course, primarily for this aspect of my audience, Gran Turismo. Although, it might be nice to get some other silhouette race cars for it to go up against as well. But that's it for this pick, of course. I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.